If you are packing for a trip, these do not go in the suitcase without a bag. This is so easy to make. It keeps everything clean in your suitcase, and because it has a French seam, it is totally washable. The size for women's is perfect. If you cut it 22 inches long and you cut the width of fabric in half, you get the perfect size for most women's shoes. The beauty of doing a French seam, which is like this, which basically means encasing the raw edges in there, is that this is going to get dirty from these shoes too, so you can always pop those in the laundry with everything else when you get back from your trip. I've seen them before where they've had zippers, but I don't want to do a zipper for a shoe bag. This is the quickest and easiest way. Drawstring, one side, the extra fabric folds up, you can make it nice and tight, and they're cute. Of course, my husband didn't want one quite as cute, and his shoes didn't fit in this size bag as well. So what I made for him was a bit more manly, and I cut this one 28 by 20, added a drawstring, still plenty of room, can fold it up, compacts beautifully. So now we are ready to travel, and all of our clothes are going to stay clean. So let's talk about what you need to make some for yourself. I'm going to make another men's size bag because I have made more for myself than I made for my husband, I will admit. So this piece of fabric is 28 inches by 20 inches high. The other thing we're going to need is a cord. I like to use this paracord, which melts. So I'm also going to use a lighter to melt the ends once we get it all together. Safety pin to put that string through. Otherwise, all we need is our sewing machine and iron. These things whip up in no time flat. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to match the ends. And we want to make sure we have this wrong sides together because again, we're doing a French seam. And while this seems weird, and I will admit I have done it backwards by mistake, this is how we want to go. It is really important to get these edges matched very, very well because what we're going to do is we're going to sew about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Then we're going to flip it the opposite way so that the right side is on the inside, and then we're going to sew again. But if you don't have these edges lined up well, you might not catch these first row of seams in the French seam. Next, because we're going to do a drawstring channel, I'm going to mark down 2 inches from the top. So I'm putting a pin 2 inches from the top because that is where we want to start sewing. You don't want to sew all the way to the top because of how we're going to be making the channels. So we're starting to sew at this pin. We are going to sew 1/8 of an inch from that raw edge. We're going to go down the side and across the bottom. Now that we have sewn, we're going to take it to the ironing board. We're going to turn it wrong side out and make sure you push out those corners. Now, because we are going to be encasing this raw edge, we need to do a really good job pressing these seams so that that seam is right on the crease. And I often just roll it with my fingers a little bit to get it out so that both sides are even and that that seam is right on the edge. In addition to using these for shoe bags, you could use this size or a little bit bigger as a laundry bag. So now that we have that pressed nicely, we're going to go back to the sewing machine. Now we are going to sew down the side and across the bottom like we did the last time, but this time we will be catching that seam inside our stitching. So you want to go a little more than 1/4 inch from the edge. You can go 3/8 of an inch or just kind of wing it. You can feel with your finger where that other seam is. We just need to make sure it is on the right-hand side of our needle. Start where you started sewing before, not all the way at the top. We need that top section to make our drawstring channel. Now back to the ironing board. Our next step is to make the channel to put the drawstring through, which is going to require folding it down once and twice so that we can sew. But we don't want this raw edge, so we need to work on that first. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your scissors and you're going to trim to the stitch line just above the stitch line. Does that make sense? So that you're creating these 2 flaps like that. So before we fold this down, we are going to fold these over twice, very thin, and press them. And then I'm just going to quickly jump to the sewing machine and sew straight down there and straight down there. Since I think you know how to sew straight, I'm just going to go do that, and it's going to be presto changeo, done. And then I will be back to the ironing board to show you how I use this hot ruler to make turning things down evenly a breeze. So like magic, I just sewed down there so that this is going to be a nice finished edge as well. And our safety pin won't get caught when we put the drawstring through. The goal here is to fold a teeny bit down and then fold it down so that this fold is basically lined up with where we cut. This hot ruler is really cool. It is a ruler that you can iron right on top of, and it is no problem. And it has all the different markings. So it's an easy way to quickly get things even. So I'm just gonna put it up there so that I will be folding down 1/4 inch. And I can just do this and glide my iron right on there. Then I'm gonna grab my quilter's clapper, press down. That takes some of the heat out of the fabric, and it also makes that seam a little bit sharper. It isn't quite as sharp as if you just folded it down because of the slight thickness of the ruler. So I usually just go back over it one more time. Now I'm gonna flip it over and do the same thing on the other side, and then all we have to deal with is the fold. When you do the second side, you wanna make sure you keep the first side folded down so that you're not unpressing it. And then with these two sides pressed so nicely, you can just kind of pull it like that, and that fold is going to work and be the correct length. If you need to nudge it a little bit, do that. And now we just need to bring it down to here. So I'm gonna use this more as a guide than to flip it over. I'm gonna put this lined up with where we want it to end. And then I'm just going to fold down so that that first fold is right along my ruler. This is a handy, handy tool that a lot of people don't know about or don't have. And once you get it, you're gonna be like, wow, where have you been all my life? Please do not try this with an acrylic ruler because things will not go as well. And this is a hot ruler from Clover. Again, lining it up with that cut line with this side. Flip where it folds. Put it flat. Give that one more press. Now we're just gonna sew right along that edge. We're in the home stretch. All we need to do is add our cord, and this shoe bag is ready to go. So we are going to turn it right side out. We have this beautiful French seam with all the edges encased. And sometimes you might have a few stray threads coming out. Here's one. Just grab it, don't pull too hard, and then just snip that off. Now we need to measure the drawstring. You can use any kind of material, of course. I'm going to use this paracord. I love using this for drawstring bags. So to figure out how long you need it to be, I just put it across and I add about 4 to 5 inches, and then I double that. Now, because this is nylon, if you just cut it, it will fray a bit. So my trick is you take a piece of painter's tape and you put it over the spot that you want to cut, so that when you cut it in half, half of it that you're going to be threading and using is going to be under the tape, and then the other half will be protected for putting that away and storing it until you use that again. Because this channel is wide enough, I'm going to use a quilting pen because it will be a little bit quicker to thread this through than using another one. And I'm just going to put the pin looped through like that. If you just put it through one way, this ends up folding back and it makes it a little bit harder. Then you're just going to put it in one end and keep going until it comes out the other end. Now, I have seen shoe bags that have a double drawstring, but to me, for something that's just keeping your shoes away from your clothes in your suitcase, I really don't think that that is necessary. That would require another whole row of French seam to sew. So I'm a big fan of just cutting a piece of fabric, folding it in half, and doing a single drawstring. This isn't a decorative project, but a practical one. All right, so now we have that coming back out. We can take our pin off. Then I just try and even up the ends. And while this is all flat, you want to tie this end in a knot. And it really doesn't need to be much further than where it goes in and out of the fabric. Like, you don't have to have this very long. You just want to make sure this is flat so it's open as wide as it will go. Now I'm just going to trim about 1/2 inch to 1 inch from that knot. And here's what I'm talking about. This paracord, it very easily frays apart. But because it is made of, I believe, nylon, it will melt. Be very careful using flames. I'm just going to gently put that on there. You can really see the black melting. You don't have to do it much. You don't want to do it long. The goal is not to catch this on fire, but just to melt the ends. Ooh, I can feel it sticky. When it dries, it'll harden, and then that is never going to fray. So now our shoe bag is done, and it is ready for my husband's sneakers. Put them in the big part down first on its side, and then the bigger part up top. They go in super fast. And now we are ready to go somewhere and have fun. This drawstring shoe bag is so easy to make. And it is the perfect gift for anyone who travels, whether it's the occasional vacation or someone who is constantly on the go. This keeps their shoes away from their clothes. It is super simple and compact to pack, and it is easy to make. So the question is, who will you make one for first?